So we're going to get into our main topic of discussion here, but I want to read off this last two comments from Harbinger because it's a good tie-in my opinion. He
Can I
says, "Oh, go ahead."
before you tie in? I want to show what we got some news yesterday out of South China, which was a little negative, and I wanted to pull that up
Let me know when you're
real
ready.
quick because it's still on the medical side of it, and I want to. And this was a very concerning article. I'm going to read a couple of quotes from it. A team from Fudan University analyzed blood samples from 175 patients discharged from their health clinic center and found that nearly a third had unexpectedly low levels of antibodies. In some cases, the antibodies could not be detected at all. The researchers said that they were surprised to find that the antibody titer, which is the level, value in about a third of the patients was less than 500, a level that might be too low to provide protection. They were quoted as saying about 30% of patients failed to develop high titers of neutralizing antibodies after COVID 19 infection. However, the disease duration of these patients compared to others was similar. The low amounts of antibodies could affect herd immunity, resistance to the disease among the general population to stop its spread. The researchers also found that the COVID 19 antibody could bind with a distantly related strain that caused an outbreak of SARS or severe acute respiratory syndrome in 2003, but the binding could not suppress the SARS virus replication in cells, dashing hopes of developing a vaccine for two or even more coronavirus strains at once. This is really concerning because basically what this found is that a large number of people that are exposed have moderate symptoms. They go through the fever, they go through the body aches, all that. They recover, but within a relatively short period of time, the level of antibodies or the titer, their level of that in their body drops tremendously off, which opens up the door for secondary infections. Can you get it again? If you don't have a high level of those antibodies, then you don't have that immunity that we thought people were getting. That's very, very concerning. It's also concerning in terms of vaccine developments that are trying to use antibodies, which is an older form of vaccines. And a matter of fact, there was another article out today. I want to say it was South Korea as well, but I could be wrong on that. But there were 51 patients who had gone through, been identified, got over their symptoms, tested negative to the virus, were basically recovering, and now suddenly have it again, which is something we heard out of Wuhan very early in this from some of the doctors that were silenced, was that you could get this a second time. It was far worse the second time. It attacked your heart, and that was leading to those rapid, quick deaths from coronary failure. So it's really concerning. They're going to have to do a lot more studies on this, but the fact that we're not seeing high levels of antibodies to SARS COVID 2, the new one, is really concerning because that means everybody could then get it a second time, a third time. This virus is sneaky as hell. It hides out for a long period of time. It does things that we're not used to things doing. So that's a little concerning. I just wanted to bring that up because that means we could maybe never get to herd immunity because nobody or a large portion of us won't get immunity.
So interesting that you bring that up. I've never personally talked with you about this, Doug, but this is just something that I've been hearing other experts talking about. Primarily, the expert that was brought on to the Joe Rogan podcast, who had been studying the effects, the long-term effects of nurses and hospital staff and doctors that are constantly exposed and re-exposed to this virus, is that they're just getting the symptoms worse and worse instead of getting better. Like in a traditional sense, if you get the flu, you get over it, you take a couple days off or whatever, and you build the antibodies to it. It's a lot harder to get that same strain of the regular flu, or in any cold for that matter. For that season, you have the antibodies in your system, but for whatever reason, these doctors and nurses are getting, excuse me, they're getting the virus a lot worse because they're exposed to a lot more of it and they're getting re-exposed constantly, and it's usually that second or third exposure by the time they have symptoms because they're healthy people. I mean, they're people in their 20s and their early 30s, even even as late as early 40s is considered a non-at-risk group for this virus. And these are the people that are getting it so bad they're being put on ventilators, they're dying, they're having to live their life in isolation, away from their families, away from everybody, and then they're dying these slow, painful deaths as relatively healthy people with really no underlying health conditions. I mean, I do know that the cases of people under the age of 40 with no underlying health conditions in New York alone is at least at 20 now, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a lot to kill people. I mean, to kill healthy people when they said that they weren't an at-risk target for this group. But a lot of people are going to compare that to flu numbers. A lot of people are going to compare that to cold numbers, and then obviously you have to
We're
look at the regular ways people die every day: the heart disease, the traffic collisions, the drug overdoses. But this virus, the whole point of this virus is that it's something we need to get a grasp on. That's the problem. That's what people are missing about this is you don't want to compare this to things that we already have dying. We already have ways of us dying every single day, whether it's in horrific accidents, traffic collisions, a deer hits you, and then your regular heart diseases, aneurysms, strokes, whatever it might be. The problem is that if we take that number of people that are dying or at least having to go to the hospital, and we have something that's causing thousands of people to mass go at once, it's going to back up all of our systems and kill a lot more people as collateral damage. And this is something that we should be able to control to a certain degree because it's a viral issue. So I want to catch up on some of the chat here. I don't know. That's the question that I don't know how to answer. Harbinger 50 says, "Are we supposed to have a rolling shutdown of society every Corona season for half a century? It can't work." And that's one thing that me and Doug have talked at length about off stream. That's one of the reasons that topic alone is one of the reasons we decided to start this podcast is because we're getting into these in-depth conversations, basically foreshadowing what could happen and all the negatives to every scenario. And it's like, we don't know. We don't know if we're going to have to start taking a pill every year, if we're going to have to get a shot every year, if we're going to have to do shutdowns every year. People need comparisons to grasp the whole idea. That is true. They do need to be able to compare it to something.
and he, and here's the concern with that rolling shutdown with the data that's coming out now with the low antibody levels, and then these people in South Korea who appear to get reinfected. Because I was looking back at the article I was reading, they don't think these people got reinfected. What they're saying the data is showing them is that they had it. It almost went into remission and then resurfaced again and came back stronger. So that's really concerning for a lot of people, because if 80% of the people are having mild symptoms or whatever, fever, and then they're fine, especially with younger people, and we all think we're okay and you've gotten over it and you got immunity. What happens if a month or 2 months from now it comes back and it reactivates in your body and it comes back worse and it goes to your heart? We don't know. I mean, there's so much unknown about this. Are we going to have to do rolling lockdowns and things? It's very concerning. A lot of research that's got to be done, because a lot of people jump to a lot of conclusions early on, and we don't know how this thing works, but it's a wicked, nasty virus. It's pretty scary.
And you see, and that's the hard part about wanting to compare it to something is if we compare it to the flu, um, then you could say the symptoms are similar to the flu or to a really bad cold or to pneumonia or to bronchitis. Some of the symptoms, the side effects of the virus can be similar, but how the virus attacks your body, how it's transmissible so easily, and how just widespread and how fastly it became a pandemic is unlike anything we've seen besides maybe the Spanish flu of 19 what was it, like 1913
1918
1918,
to
and
19.
then the Black Plague and other horrible pandemics that people was taken at once, in a massive storm. So that's the hard part with
Well, and you've got all these different families. So you got the avian flu that comes from birds. You've got the swine flu that comes from pig carriers. You got coronavirus, which comes from bat families. So it's hard to say they're the same because they're very different in how they work and what they do. So even when you talk about the flu, which flu are you talking about? Because There's a lot of differences.
So basically, the problem with the COVID-19 and why it's such a unique topic and why it's so easy to talk about so much and why it's so gravitating for media is because there's so much unknown about it that you can kind of make a scary, horrible monster type figure of it, and that's what sells newspapers. And yes, those are all from the same family of viruses, but they all affect and spread in different ways. I do know that SARS and MERS were really similar. Um, I do know with MERS, they weren't 100%
Well,
sure on how it transferred, but they do know that isolating the victims for 14 days in the hospital while they received treatment was the only way to kind of stop the widespread or to kind of stop it from spreading as fast.
and the thing with SARS, that's SARS-CoV or SARS-CoV-1.
Right.
This is we're dealing with sort of SARS-CoV-2, which is the coronavirus. But now they're finding the antibodies that fight CoV-2 don't fight CoV-1, which was the original SARS. So that there's significant differences between all these. Um, Much more different than we like to think. We like to just group everything as a flu, and it's even within the COVID class, antibodies don't cross fight things. So it's a lot of research that's got to be done.
So yeah, basically, Harbinger says he's responding to when I said we don't know if we're gonna have to take a pill or get a shot every year. He says I'll be damned if I'm getting shots every year, especially government mandated ones.
Oh no.
Just wait until there's an increase of some new birth defect or mental thing like an increase of ADHD or autism. I would not take a shot just because the government told me to. I have to see some serious research on it and everything like that.
And I'd want
Um,
it to go for a year of people taking it and see what happens.
I can
Because
self isolate for a
this
year.
thing is sneaky as hell, and you can use antibodies and stuff, and it forces it to attack your heart instead. It comes back stronger. You could drop dead a month after getting the vaccine. I'd have to see some real data and let it go a season, and I'll take my chances. That's me.
So he
I'm,
also
I'm with
says
Harbinger.
the problem is it's a combo attack. The virus COVID-19 specifically is a combo attack on multiple levels. But sure, it's natural. And yeah, that's kind of what we were talking about on our Sunday conspiracies. Is we don't know how natural this is. Obviously, it appears in nature. Animals are getting this virus. This virus is found in animals. Similar viruses, exceptionally similar viruses are, but they are never this extreme, and that's
And I've
kind of the scary problem.
And I've got some additional information to follow up from Sunday's show, and I was going to do it tonight. And I said, no, I'm going to keep it for next Sunday because I think it fits in with Conspiracy Sunday. So we'll start that up with some follow up on the whole backbone thing and how that works and the safety record in China. And because there are a lot of scientists coming out now saying, oh no, we're absolutely positively certain this came straight from bats. There's a lot more to it than that. And they're using some deceptive numbers and statistics to make that argument.
So basically, make sure you hit
Yeah.
that follow button and you come back on Sunday to talk about some awesome COVID-19 conspiracies. We like to stick mostly with the talk shows on the facts that are presented with us, breaking them down in a way that makes sense to us, and getting you guys to go out and do your own research. But the conspiracy theories are when we start seeing trends and we try to connect the dots ourselves and come up with interesting theories. And it's just a lot of fun to me to talk
I
about.
love it.
And it'd be interesting to see in a year or two what comes out being right if we can ever get that proof.